Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Nerds Gummy Clusters, the sweet treat that always elevates the vibe. With a sweet gummy surrounded with tangy, crunchy nerds, every bite of Nerds Gummy Clusters brings you a whole new world of flavor. Whether it's game night, on the way to a concert, or kicking back with your crew, unleash your senses with Nerds Gummy Clusters.
Hi there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
We embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women. And so it's in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to the reason why you may love or hate today's popular books. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This is part 2 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 16 through 22 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass.
Before we dive in, don't forget Split. Spoilers.
Spilt.
I will. Spilt. I still struggle with it. We're episode 4. And that is spoilers, perspective, interpretation, language, and themes.
We could change it to Split and take out the I.
No, we should continue until I one day learn.
If you would like more information, please go back and listen to the start of part 1 of this week's episode.
We start chapter 19, and I am thrilled to have Kaltain's POV. Also, just side note, Amy and I just took like a nice 15-minute break in between the episodes because this is so long. These episodes are so long.
So long.
Yeah.
I was counting on like season 1 length. And here we are beating our own records.
I know. Oh, yeah. This is like, it takes 4 hours plus to record. So we're just back from a break. I just want you guys to know. Okay, back to this. So it's chapter 19. We are in Kaltain's point of view. It's her first time getting her POV. And I am very happy about this. Quote, she hadn't even had the chance to speak to him, which was especially irksome, given that she'd spent the better part of the morning dressing for court. Her raven black hair was neatly coiled around her head, and her skin glowed golden from the subtle shimmering powders she dusted on her face. Though the bindings on her pink and yellow gown had crushed her ribs, and the pearl diamonds around her neck strangled her, she kept her chin high, poised. So this is Kaltain being sad that she didn't get a chance to see Dorian. We are seeing how not only is like her appearance and her clothes used as armor, it's also used to show just how strangled and tied she is and how there is still no power here. So she is searching for a weapon. Her weapons are her looks. She uses it as armor, as, like I said, her version of a weapon. Even then, her weapons are hurting her. Her necklace is strangling her. Her ribs are being crushed. And the levels of sacrifice that she's doing just so that Dorian can potentially be there and get a glimpse of her. And then that doesn't even happen. Mm-hmm. So let's also kind of give her a chance. I want to give Kaltain more of a chance, an understanding. Rather than a chance, let's look at more of an understanding of where she's at. And one of which is her hyperfixation on Dorian. Now, on one hand, we look at this and she says, yeah, does she want to be queen? Does she want to be with the hot prince? Yeah, maybe. But what about the fact that she's engaged to the Duke, and the only person that could get her out of that engagement would be the prince? So not only is it because he's the prince and he's hot and everything, but that is her last resort. Otherwise, she is stuck with this disgusting predator of a man. So I just wanted to side note that.
Is she engaged or is she just promised him sex?
Her father promised herself to
Okay,
him.
okay, okay.
And even the queen says, like, oh, it's such a shame that she's with Duke
Mm-hmm.
Parrington because she'd
Yeah.
be so lovely, right? Caltaine is a woman with very, very little power. And what little power she has is fleeting and it's based off of sex. Quote, as she stepped into his path, him being the Duke, he paused at the sight of her. His eyes gleamed with a hunger that made her want to cringe. He bowed low. Milady. Your Grace, she smiled, forcing all that repulsion deep, deep, deep down. We are now in her point of view, and we are getting a very clear of she does not want the Duke. She is not attracted to the Duke. She is repulsed by him, which is not surprising because we met the Duke early on, and he was a dick. So why are we surprised of like, oh, well, he wouldn't be a great fiance either?
Mm-hmm.
And also the way that it's described, right, is that he is hungry for her. It shows a very predatory action here. And although we see this other times in very sexy ways, where the main male lead is hungry for the female lead, that's not what we're getting here. We're getting someone who is very uncomfortable with this man's attention. That being said, Caltaine is trying to play the game, and to an extent she knows how to play the game. And we should just respect that. I think we shouldn't judge this at all from her.
And I think we need to think about it in the context of a world where there's a lot of violence against women,
Yeah.
right? Caltaine is doing what is necessary to survive.
Absolutely. And we get to see just how gross the Duke is. And reminder, he was a jerk early on. So just kind of remembering that as we get more descriptions about him. Quote, she tried not to wince as his hairy, meaty fingers rubbed her pristine skin and instead delicately inclined her head towards him. He's gross. He's got meaty fingers. I have meaty fingers, so I feel a little offended by that, but whatever. But we're getting this idea that she sees how gross he is, especially like, when she has her own quote pristine skin, she puts an effort into her looks. She knows what she looks like and she knows that that is not only the best way to attract him, but her biggest flaw. I don't want to say her flaw, but her biggest weakness. So not only are her looks something that she can attract, her looks now put her in danger.
There's also something about it where his hairy, meaty fingers seem very dirty instantly, even though the word dirty was not used.
Yeah.
Whereas her pristine skin is clean and virginal, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, despite what the Queen said about Caltaine and Duke Parrington to Dorian, as Jack has alluded, seeing the ugly truth of Caltaine's association with him. Now, despite her discomfort, despite how much he grosses her out, at the end of the day, he is a tool of power to help her rise above her station. And she is willing to pay the cost. She's willing to pay that fee if it ultimately betters her situation. That is part of the performance of being in this court that Dorian doesn't understand because he is in a place of privilege. That the performance that these courtiers put on, including Caltaine, is so that you can survive in this world where there are tiers even amongst the aristocracy, where everyone's just trying to make the best of the situation that's been given to them. And so as readers, hopefully we're feeling empathy for her, because at the end of the day, no one else is going to feel that empathy. And that's really tragic.
I think it also makes sense why a character or a person might build a certain bitterness knowing that no one is empathetic to them. Like she doesn't have anyone on her side here. Going back to this idea that she has such little control, she doesn't have much in her arsenal, so she can only use what she has, which is sex, quote, and convincing him to invite her to court, mostly by implying what might await him once she was out of her father's household and without a chaperone, hadn't been that difficult. I don't know if first-time readers judge her for this. I'm sure there's some who did, because it might be like, oh, she's just trying to get her way and manipulate guys to get to court. But again, in this moment, think about it, that she was engaged to this nasty ass man, and she's just thinking, I need to find anyone else to get out of here. And the only way I can do that is if I go to court. She has a game plan. So she uses what little things she has, which is, like I said, sex. And even though Selena hasn't done this exact same thing, but she has done similar things of using sex as a weapon.
Mm.
So, I mean, just chapters before where it's like, come tonight, come see me tonight to Dorian. Not the same thing, but, you know, like she's also using the weapons that she has.
Yeah.
We get a little bit more insight into Caltain's inner thoughts. Quote, no, she was tired of being a minor lady, waiting to be married off to the highest bidder, tired of petty politics and easily manipulated fools. I think people might get caught up on the first thing where she says being a minor lady, and it's like, oh, she only has ambitions of being more powerful, of being the queen. That's more power. Being a minor lady gives her no power. Getting up in the hierarchy, now she gets more of a say in her own life, which isn't much, as we saw from the queen herself, right? And Caltaine knows what she's doing with these men, and she considers them to be fools. And who else considers everyone else to be fools? Selena.
Mm-hmm.
They're very similar, and Caltaine obviously wants to control her own life. So why are we constantly annoyed at her? And I'm trying to remember the first time reading this versus me now, who has the most like protective instinct of Caltaine. Does the reader like her at this point, or is that just Selena that doesn't like her, but the reader has caught on by now?
I don't think I liked her at this point.
Yeah,
The first time.
that's fair.
I don't think I was capable. I don't, not that I wasn't capable, but I don't think I paused to really consider whether I should have empathy for her.
I think so. I think that was the same way. Even with sex being her weapon, her power, it's all so temporary. Quote, though he didn't hide that he wanted her, he hadn't pushed her into bed. Yet. But with a man like Parrington, who always got what he wanted, she didn't have much time to find a way to avoid owing up to the subtle promise she'd made him earlier that year. Sex is the only form of power that Caltaine has, and the only form of power is that she can withhold it. And it is based off of her beauty, her youth, her withholding, and what happens once she has sex with him. What happens when that is now no longer desirable to him and he can go find someone else to have sex with? What happens as she gets older? What happens as she is no longer as beautiful as this delicate little doll? And it's hard because I don't like saying, no longer like youth and beauty go away. Youth obviously, but I don't even like calling it that youth disappears. I think there's like different stages of beauty with every decade that you get into. I don't
Mhm.
imagine one disappearing and one coming in, but just, you've leveled up.
Yeah, well, and I think Caltaine has a right to be afraid whether or not she agrees with the idea that her youth is the only thing valuable to
Yeah.
her. Because look at Dorian. Dorian's supposed to be a good guy, and he judges his mother for being older than him.
Yeah. I know.
Now, as a reminder, what did Selena say to Kale earlier in the episode? We all survive in our own way. We are seeing how Caltaine survives, and she uses her role as a gossiping woman to her advantage, just like the way she uses her sex to her advantage. She's also using this idea of just being a gossiping little woman to her advantage to glean information from Duke Parrington. Now, we might resent Caltaine for that because she's trying to learn more information about Selena. She's trying to figure out how to separate Selena from Dorian. But lying and figuring out who your opponents are is par for the course. That doesn't make Caltaine evil in her manipulation. Selena has done the same thing and will do the same thing
Mm-hmm.
in her own competition, right? These two women are competing for different things, granted, that they are parallel to each other. They are mirrors of each other. And I can guarantee that if Selena were in Caltaine's shoes, she would do the same thing that Caltaine is doing.
Yep.
So we have to have grace for Caltaine. During their conversation, that being between Duke Parrington and Caltaine, Duke Parrington gets mad at the insinuation that Dorian might be attracted to or interested in Lady Lillian. Quote, a thrill went through Caltaine at his anger. Not anger at her, but at Lillian, at the weapon she just had the good fortune to stumble across. Caltaine knows, just like Selena knows, information is a weapon. And it's a necessary weapon in the fight for survival in the royal court. I think what makes this moment really tragic to me, knowing the direction that Keltain's path goes, is the fact that she thinks in this moment she's unearthed a really powerful weapon that will be the key to her survival. But in a lot of ways, it's the key to her destruction. She will ultimately be punished for trying to survive,
Yeah.
for trying to make her situation better because she had no power over her own circumstances. I don't discredit SJM for doing it because I love the tragic beauty of Keltain's story, but it also doesn't have to be that way. I have so many mixed feelings about it.
I get into this conversation with our friend all the time of how much should fantasy reflect reality, and how much of it can we like not just have a female character that doesn't get screwed over. And yes to both. Like, yes, I don't want, women to keep getting screwed over in literature, and also yes to what if we walk away from this as a reader saying, wow, I judged too harshly.
Yeah.
you know I I think that's also needed. So I have no answers to that. Do you know who she reminds me of in
Who?
another like form, another variation? Cordelia from Buffy.
Yes. Very Cordelia. Yep.
Like, what if Cordelia was trapped in a system like this and
Yeah.
she had to use her own weapons? And I think like people who've watched Buffy, it's like that's another character who you judge, who does grow, but you realize she's just trying to stay alive.
Well, I mean, actually, if you watch the first 3 seasons of Buffy and then watch the first season of Angel, it is Keltain's story. You
Mm,
see how the system has set her up for failure.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy I made a Buffy reference. Selena, I just want to know, Selena was not kind to her. So
Mhm.
why should she be kind to Selena? And I know Selena's like our heroine. This is her book. And because of that, we don't really like Keltain. Because of that, we get defensive for Selena. But
Mhm.
I just want to note that even though she hasn't done anything that at this point overtly manipulative or bad against Selena,
That's a good point.
when Selena has continuously dismissed her in front of other people and humiliated her.
Right. And enjoys the idea of her being in pain.
Yeah.
I mean, how is this any different from being like with, in high school and the guy you have a crush on? Is he still with his girlfriend? I hope he's not with his girlfriend. Oh,
Yeah.
good. He's not with his girlfriend. Let me swoop in. Like,
And then she realizes that Parrington has an anger issue with Selena. So, how can I use this to my advantage?
yeah.
Great. She doesn't have to use sex now. There's another thing
Yeah.
that she gets to use. And it's not even, again, at this point, her being like, well, if I can just get her to murder him, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true. So at this point, we cut away from Keltain's point of view, and then we go to Dorian and Kale. And Kale is berating Dorian for being around Selena, and Dorian's not having it. And after just seeing him with his mother, and we've seen him with his father, who's awful to him, Kale's supposed to be Dorian's best friend.
Yeah.
And we see Kale telling Dorian what to do.
Yeah, you have really good points to make coming up, so I'm gonna jump in before you make your good points.
Sure.
And I want to look at the dynamic between the two, like two being Dorian and Kale, because we don't really have much of just the two of them without Selena, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
this is one of the first, I can't remember if it's the first time, but one of the few times that we're seeing just the boys be boys, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it really shows the difference here. So you have Kale, who, talking about Selena, quote, she might be pretty and might impress you with her cleverness, but she is still an assassin. Kale knows what's going on. He knows Selena. He knows that she's pretty and she's smart, but he is also very clear and aware of that it should not influence Dorian or anyone. On the other hand, you have Dorian who thinks, quote, why would she kill me? I think she likes being pampered. And he makes assumptions about her own motivations and her own desires. And his assumptions are that she likes being pampered, which is something that he is able to give her. And it's not even like a active, hey, I've come and gotten you these flowers that I plucked for you. It's a dismissal. It's a dismissive sort of action. She gets to be pampered because he tells other people to do so.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with what he's really doing, with what he's actually participating in giving her. And also, there's a certain level of judgment of her gender, of like, well, she's a woman. Of course she would want to be pampered. That being said, I too would love to be pampered. So, I'm available.
Dorian, come find me.
But once you've like aged a decade and some, oh God. No.
That just hurt my heart. It
Oh
wasn't even
no.
about me.
That hurt. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. Our demo is still really young and they think we're cool. At least they listen to us. Maybe they make fun. I don't know.
Dorian is being dismissive of Selena and her motivations, as Jack is pointing out. He's also being dismissive of the danger in the palace. Now, Kale ultimately is worrying about Dorian's safety. That is why Kale is telling Dorian what to do or not to do, even though I'm sure that's annoying to Dorian, who is powerless and is now being told by his best friend, you have no power. Just listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So, to try and gain control of the situation, to try and own something and own some power in this situation, Dorian tells Kale he worries too much. Again, this goes back to this idea of Dorian being comfortable. He's naive. As Kale reminds Dorian, it's his job to worry, which is true. And Dorian shouldn't dismiss Kale because Kale's just doing his job. Later, Dorian asserts that, quote, I bet it was just a drunken brawl, which is something he's said before.
Yeah.
Internally, he thinks, though, quote, he had been in plenty of brawls himself and had never known anyone to go about removing someone's innards. A trickle of fear formed in the back of Dorian's mind. Dorian is in denial. He's in denial about the danger in the castle because it is a threat to his comfort. It is a threat to the status quo. It is better for Dorian to be comfortable, naive, and bored than to be in danger and lose control of a situation he already has no power in.
Yeah.
Which, what we're seeing here, in my opinion, he's demonstrating a resistance to change in his circumstances, which by the end of this episode, he's going to flip the switch on. Yeah. And we'll get to the reasons why that happens.
Before we go into the next chapter, I didn't write this down, but I just want to note that at one point he teases Kale for having a crush on Selena, and then he goes and he hits on her shamelessly. And even though Kale's like, no, I don't, he knows that that is your best friend. You know when your best friend is kind of into someone, and to then go and then hit on her, he knows. So it's
about power.
It's about power.
He has no power, so he's going to scrape any scraps he can get, even if it means hurting his best friend.
Yeah. So now we're starting chapter 20 and we're back with Selena, and this is after she's gotten into her fight with Kale, and she's kind of in a mental spiral here, which is something that, Dorian would never. Like she wouldn't be in a mental spiral with Dorian like she is with Kale. Yeah. Quote, he had more important things to do than guard the world's most famous criminal, did he? She didn't enjoy being cruel, but hadn't he deserved it? Here's a good moment of her disassociating with herself again. So, this is where all of a sudden she is the world's greatest assassin. She is so wonderful. And that's because she's trying to hype herself up, right? She's trying to say, well, why doesn't he pay attention to me? I'm dangerous. Aren't I so scary? Please come look at me. All she wants to do is say like, well, why wouldn't he be with me? Why am I not worthy of his time? She's got a nice little spiral there.
Part of Selena's spiral is fueled by regret. She is having second thoughts about her little tantrum that she had in front of Kale. And I say that not to be patronizing to Selena, even though it definitely came across as patronizing to Selena. But, she verbally vomited all over him after, having vomited earlier in the day. It's just funny to me. Yeah. Anyway, quote, she'd really made a fool out of herself by mentioning the vomiting, and she'd called him all sorts of nasty things. Did he trust her or hate her? Selena looked at her hands and realized she had wrung them so badly that her fingers were red. How had she gone from the most feared prisoner in Endovier to this sappy mess? First off, what's the first thing she regrets mentioning? It's the vomiting. This was an unspoken secret between Selena and Kale. They never acknowledged it. They knew it happened. and they just moved on.
Yeah.
That was her humanness. That was her weakness. And now she's aired it out in front of other people, Dorian, Nehemia. I think that shows on some level Selena's desperation because she's craving connection, because she's lonely. As I've said before, Selena lost everyone she thought she was close to before going into Endovier. She just wants friends and people she can trust. It's natural for Selena to crave Kale's friendship and to worry about having lost it when he's really the only person that she's been emotionally intimate with for a long time. I also want to point out what Jack was saying, how she has to disassociate from herself. She's giving herself titles. You know, she was the world's greatest assassin. Now she's the most feared prisoner in Endovier. This is how Selena copes. She copes by thinking of herself in these vain, arrogant ways, because what else does she have if not those titles? And the answer is nothing.
This whole entire moment, though, it's her just what we're coming back to the question of the episode is this moment of her being real and honest with herself. Now, even though we're saying that she kind of hypes herself up by saying, you know, the world's greatest assassin, yes, there's some disassociation there, but with her question of how had she gone from being the most feared prisoner to Endovier to this sappy mess, that is a very honest question. That is a very, that is, you have sappy, you have mess. Those are two intense things to kind of like put, like to title yourself as. And I am her, she is me, she is all of us.
I think we need to go back to this idea that Selena is mentally where she is, partially because of the reality of Sven being killed. And that's really done a number on her.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is she sappy and worried about, have I ruined my relationship with Kale, she's also super anxious right now. And that's demonstrated in her preparation for potential violence. Quote, she'd already altered the hinges on all her doors so that they squealed loudly anytime they opened. If someone entered her room, she'd know well in advance. She'd managed to embed some stolen sewing needles into a bar of soap for a makeshift miniature pike. It was better than nothing, especially if this murderer had a taste for champion blood. Oh yeah, I forgot. You know, champion got killed.
Yeah.
Other than Sven. If Selena loses the friendship of Kale, in a place that's already a prison for her, in a place, even though it's comfortable, it's still a prison,
Mm-hmm.
in a place where there is a murderer on the loose killing champions,
Yeah.
she is easy prey.
Yeah.
If she doesn't maintain that relationship with Kale and Dorian, her anxiety is justified at this moment.
Oh, yeah. You make that pike, babe.
Yeah, you do what you need to do
Yeah.
to survive. Now, Selena does try to calm herself down. She tries to step away from the anxiety, but in doing so, approaches the piano in her apartment, something she has definitely avoided until now. Now, as first-time readers, we're not entirely familiar with how important music is to Selena, but we, having read at least the first 3 books, understand music is important. It is significant then that Selena is approaching music. It is symbolizing, in my mind, Selena accessing her truest self. Now, with a non-spoiler Crescent City mention, I want to acknowledge that in House of Earth and Blood, in Sky and Breath, we learned from Bryce and Rune how sensitive Fae ears are and how important music and sound is to them. Selena, we know by the 3rd book, being Fae, I'm going to guess, has the same sort of sensitivity, which is why the music is going to unlock something in her. Quote, carefully as if approaching a sleeping person, Selena walked to the large instrument. In approaching the piano, Selena is daring to access the self sleeping inside her, that princess or young assassin who used to have the luxury of playing and enjoying music, and really the naivety of youth before she was sent to Endovier.
Yeah. It's so funny because, like, the first time, and I've said this several times with other episodes, that I just, when I would read certain parts of her, I'm like, okay, you like music, don't we all? Like, you're not special for liking music. We all like music. However, it is a clue about her lineage. It's a clue about where she comes from. It's potentially a clue about her being Fae, which is her lineage. But, you know, there's a lot more to it. And, you know, of course, as a princess, she would have learned how to play the pianoforte. And even as a side note, quote, Arabin Hamel made her play for him whenever they saw each other. No, it's not Arabin had her learn how to play.
Mm-hmm.
Which means she came to him already knowing how to play.
Yeah.
So more evidence that this is something from her princess days.
Yeah.
And then you have the fact that also that like she was forcibly play, like she had to play for him, you know. It was a source of someone else's entertainment rather than her joy. So I'm sure in this moment she's reminiscing on when she'd play for joy versus other men's entertainment.
I think that's a great point. I mean, this is kind of a throwaway sentence, but it says so much.
Yeah.
Not only about her past, but the fact that Arobin treated her like a toy.
Yeah. We're going to get so much about him soon. So excited.
Yeah.
So excited.
We see as Selena starts to play the piano that the notes she plays reflect her deepest feelings. Quote, Sam, like her, had been betrayed, and sometimes the absence of him hit her so hard that she forgot how to breathe. She touched a lower note. It was deep and throbbing, full of sorrow and anger. Now, the piano's not full of sorrow and anger. Selena is. But she's projecting those feelings onto the piano because that's easier than acknowledging them within her. Quote, the notes burst from her fingers, staggering at first, but then more confidently as the emotion in the music took over. It was a mournful piece, but it made her into something clean and new. And then again, this is echoed later with, quote, she forgot about time as she drifted between pieces, voicing the unspeakable, opening old wounds, playing and playing as the sound forgave and saved her. Now, I keep talking about this idea that the beginning of the episode robbed Selena of her vulnerability with Cale and that intimacy. Granted, Cale's part of that problem, right? He's withholding it. And so what does Selena do? She has to go inward. She can't find that intimacy from anyone else. So she has to go inward. And by doing so, has to unlock these old hurts, but also in the process, starting to heal. And though she is healing, though she is being vulnerable with herself and doing the things she's avoided for probably at least a year, we then have Dorian, who just walks in and catches her in this vulnerable state.
Oh, he's such a dick.
So the narrative switches into Dorian's point of view. And he thinks, quote, he had come here with the intention of embarrassing a snide assassin and had instead found a young woman pouring her secrets into a pianoforte. 2 chapters ago, Dorian thought regularly about how lovely Selena is. But now she's just a snide assassin he wants to embarrass. Why the change of heart? Why this change of point of view from Dorian? Now, what's happened in between? Cale has admonished Dorian for, being close to Selena. How dare you? You shouldn't be doing that. She's dangerous. You need to think about your safety. With that in mind, Dorian is falling back on his preconceived notions of Selena being the snide assassin. He's falling into the stereotyping that both he and Cale are guilty of. Yet, he's still here. He is still here talking to her, or wants to talk to her, because she called him out.
Yeah.
You never come and talk to me. So what does he do in order to gain control, in order to have power? Choosing to be rebellious. He is choosing to challenge his comfort by going to her to talk to her, because that's exactly what no one wants him to do.
By you can get a lot when he calls her this just a snarky or snide assassin, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a disassociated herself from Selena. He is not there to talk to Selena. He is there to talk to the snide assassin. The snide assassin who he's been warned to stay away from, the assassin that his mother would absolutely hate. And also he's mad at Cale. I mean, I don't know if he's mad at Cale. He's probably mad at Cale for telling him what to do. And then he's like, oh, well, now I'm going to go hit on the girl you like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's there to embarrass her. What does embarrassing mean? What does that mean? Are you, at first I was like, oh, embarrassing. You're going to go and talk to her, make fun of her, or are you going to go and embarrass her and try to sleep with her?
Yeah.
And then leave her. You know what I mean?
And then
there's
snub her,
yeah, and there's a lot of layers of what embarrassment means. And
however we want to define embarrassment, ultimately at the end of the day, it's about him having power.
Yeah.
Him having power over Selena because he can't have power over anyone else.
I mean, him having power over Selena means having power over her and Cale.
Mm-hmm.
And Kale, you can argue, represents his father as well. You know, like someone that his father might want as a son, or someone who reports to his father. He's just such a dick, and he finds value in Selena for doing something that he deems important, and that is playing the piano well. So because he thinks that playing the piano well has some type of value, now she's able to get her own identity. It's almost like he's been doing the female gaze with her for a long time, but this is a super heightened female gaze moment where
Female or male?
or sorry, the male gaze. Yeah, this is a hyper male gaze moment where he comes in and she's like, "I'm here to talk to the assassin." It's like, ah, shit, you're a human. I didn't mean for that to happen. But she's still only humanized because she's doing something that he respects. Like, what if she was in there playing, I don't know, the flute? Yeah, like no one's gonna come in and be like, wow, she really put her heart and soul into that flute, you know?
The flute can be beautiful.
I'm sure, but is that which is arguably a much more sexy instrument than piano.
It's very phallic.
Very phallic. Let's give flutes more attention in books. Like she just comes along, strokes the flute.
Oh, jeez. Well, to Jack's point, Dorian is a dick. He senses she's having emotions. He senses she's pouring her secrets into the piano. So therefore, he senses he's intruded on a vulnerable moment. And yet he still chooses to be insensitive. This is showing to me he's both emotionally intelligent and not.
Yeah.
He cannot compute the idea that Aderlin's greatest assassin is also Selena, who is also capable of being sad. Because that doesn't fit his view of her.
Yep.
The male gaze. Case in point, Dorian says to Selena, quote, "I don't think anyone who plays like that can be just a criminal. It seems like you have a soul." Selena responds, quote, "Of course I have a soul. Everyone has a soul." Dorian is really, really resisting seeing humanity in Selena and in anyone around him, honestly, because he can't even see it in people like Caltaine and people at court. It makes sense that his worldview is that everyone is performing, everyone is in ornaments, if he can't see that or have empathy for anyone around him. That being the case, I have to wonder, when is the last time Dorian really encountered someone else being vulnerable, other than his own vulnerability, right? If everyone in court is putting on a performance in order to survive, no one's being vulnerable, and he has accidentally stumbled on Selena's vulnerability. It is not something she's willfully given to him.
Of course he'd feel uncomfortable with that then. Just be like,
Yeah.
oh, emotions. No, I don't know.
Yeah. Also, on the flip side, if this is the first truly vulnerable woman he's ever encountered, it makes sense he's going to latch onto her even more, right? He craves power. He craves control over his own life. Yes, let me take this vulnerable human. And I'm not trying to make Dorian a villain. We all do it. We all identify people who are vulnerable in one way or another, and we use that to our advantage. If you see someone alone at a convention, looking like they're lost, and you're there by yourself, are you going to go talk to them and maybe become their friend? I can guarantee yes.
Me? No, I would never.
But I mean, I do that all the time. And this is just my survival instinct. If I'm alone in a setting,
you want to be with someone else who's alone. Yeah,
exactly.
Girls in a club, like I will always find the other women to partner up with.
Yep. That's how we survive.
Kids these days don't dance in clubs, apparently.
Oh my!
Did you not know that? Yeah, apparently they just—I don't know what they do. I think they just stand there. But I've seen so many videos of clubs now, and they don't do anything. Like Amy and I used to dance on tables. Like it was it just me who? No, you danced on the table too.
It was like
a counter table.
It was a booth, like the top of the booths.
Yeah, you danced on there too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was both of us. We got money.
Oh, no. I never got money. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we did.
No.
They threw cash at us.
No. That's just you, babe.
Oh no. In the club, we're all fam.
So Dorian and Selena then engage in conversation, and Selena is really uncomfortable. She's been exposed, she's been invulnerable unwillingly in front of Dorian. And so what does she do? She distances herself from him. At one point, their eyes meet, and quote, she retreated behind the back of the chair. She's being very demure. She's being very skittish. That is not the Selena Dorian expects. And at one point, he thinks, ugh, I'm going to have so much fun.
I know.
Because she's not comfortable? Like,
she's trying to put
what?
space between them. Like,
Yeah.
she's just like, I'm having a private moment. I don't feel comfortable with you this close.
Right. She's trying to create a barrier because he caught her crying.
Yeah.
In the middle of trying to heal from Sam's death.
Mm-hmm.
And what was her more recent interaction? Cale flipped on her.
I know.
He abandoned her when she was trying to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Selena doesn't want to be hurt again. She's been hurt already.
Cale threw her, like, being an assassin in her face.
Yeah.
And that's what Dorian just did too. Of, you have a soul to play. It's like now he just like rubs salt in the wounds.
Yeah.
So I want to go back more to that quote with, putting the chair between the two. Quote, their eyes met and she retreated behind the back of the chair. If he didn't know better, he would have thought himself to be the assassin. He likes the power dynamics. Dorian likes her fear. He likes that she's uncomfortable. Remember, he went there to make her embarrassed. That I was about to complain saying I don't understand why people would want to make other people uncomfortable and embarrass them. And then I remembered who I am.
I know who you are.
Okay, so I do realize that maybe I haven't made the best choices in life. Even like 2 weeks ago when I was like, oh, are you having a bad day? Yeah. My uncle died. That was a funny day. No, it was a horrible day, but that was a funny moment. I held back sort of. Anyway. So the thing is, Dorian's not like me, but he's still an asshole for liking it.
Yeah, he is. He is.
He wants that power. He wants that control.
Yeah, and again, not because he's a villain, but because he
has
like Selena,
no power.
Exactly. Like Selena, like Heltane, he has no power.
Mm-hmm.
At one point during their conversation, Selena asks Dorian if Cale gave the order to kill the guards, for the guards to kill Sven. Because obviously that's been on her mind, even though she hasn't necessarily said it. Dorian explains no, that it was his father that gave an order long before her arrival. We're still in Dorian's point of view. We're not in Selena's head right now. I think she asks this question because she needs to know if Cale is human.
Mm-hmm.
And Dorian's answer rehumanizes Cale. She needed that reassurance because she knows she's still going to have to train with him. She's still going to have to rely on him. And can he be trusted? And I do think that this moment is important for Selena to continue to have a relationship with Cale and to ultimately forgive him for their spat earlier in the episode. Despite this, though, Selena articulates that she believes Cale hates her, even if it's just because of his position. And I point that out because she says it flippantly, as if, whether or not she believes it, inherently she knows Cale is captain of the guard, and he will always choose being captain of the guard over her.
Mm-hmm.
And how quickly she forgets.
I know. And I want to go into that quote because I think Dorian's response is really interesting. So Selena says, quote, I think he hates me a bit, but given his position, I'm not surprised. Why would you think he hates you? For some reason, he couldn't bring himself to deny it. He knows the truth. He knows that Cale doesn't hate her. And yet, let's go back to just the chapter before when he was teasing Cale about liking Selena. And so now here he comes, trying to get power and control over this woman, seeing her vulnerable. And now he's like, ooh, but you know what? What if it was my dick instead of Cale's dick instead? What if I hit on her? And so rather than just saying, hey, look, he doesn't hate you. I know he's harsh. He's not being a bro. He's coming in and just being like, I'm not going to answer that. But why do you think he hates you?
Yeah. It's because he doesn't want Selena to be encouraged, right? He doesn't
Yeah.
want Selena to be like, oh, Kale does like me. Maybe I should go
Be with him now.
Yeah, I was gonna say something more graphic.
Yeah, I know you were
I'll
going to say
not.
suck his dick, huh?
I was gonna go jump on his dick, but okay.
Okay, yeah. Dick was involved either way.
Dick was involved. The overall conversation as we're discussing it, as the first couple times I've read it, I'm like, this is very hot and cold, very Katy Perry of just like back and forth. You don't know what you're going to get with these two. It's constantly changing. And if you're like me, maybe at the start you thought this is bad writing, this is bad characterization. Like SJM, figure out who these people are and then write the conversation. But I actually want to argue, I think that Dorian is the cause of all the flip flop back and forth. He can't.
Sorry. I want you to know that the song Hot and Cold is only a few years away from being 20 years old.
Please, no. That hurts my soul.
Because you mentioned Katy Perry, Hot and Cold. And I was like, I don't even know if our listeners would know that song.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's like the 80s for them. Oh my God.
I think Move Along by All American Rejects turned 20 this year, as did the first Panic at the Disco album.
Oh no.
20. Yeah.
See, it's like the equivalent of like when we were teens, it would have been like the 80s, right? And hearing, oh no, all right, let's
the 80s are 20 years ago, not 40.
The 80s? I know, right? No, what are you saying?
No, mentally, the 80s
were 20 years ago. Yes.
Yeah.
Mentally, Dorian 10 years older is just fine for me. And then I did math, and then I realized, shit, I think I need him 20 years older.
Crap.
Oh no. Although the other day I like someone was talking to me and I kept reference like being like, oh, that sweet little girl over there, and she was like, she's not much older than you or younger than you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was like, well, aren't you 25? I'm like, would you like, do I hand you money? Do I just start giving you money? Is that what? I know you're not asking for it, but okay.
But I'll pay you anyway.
I'll pay you. Yeah. Continue. I totally derailed this conversation.
Totally okay. So I'm going to blame Dorian for the nature of this conversation and the reason why sometimes they seem to like each other and sometimes Dorian and Selena seem to hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I think Dorian can't figure out what to think or feel about Selena. I think he's trying to tell himself what Kale's been trying to tell him. Don't trust Selena. She's an assassin. She's a villain. Yada, yada, yada. But Dorian, being slightly emotionally intelligent, can sense the loneliness in Selena because he also feels that loneliness himself. Quote, he looked at the fire, trying not to think about where she'd been only weeks before and what that kind of loneliness might have felt like. There were no books in Endovier. Now, I don't know that I needed to add that last sentence. But he's recognizing the privilege that he has had that she has been deprived of. And that's empathy we haven't seen Dorian have for anybody else so far. When Selena tells Dorian she doesn't want to be mistaken as one of his lovers, this is when his empathy goes out the window. And he says, quote, I'm not going to debate morality with an assassin. You kill people for money, you know. Now, these two, they just don't know how to feel about each other. They make bad assumptions about each other because that's a defense mechanism, because that is easier than being vulnerable. And so let's get rid of the empathy. Let's get rid of the vulnerability. Let's just stay where we're comfortable. And that is hating each other.
Yeah, I don't even know if Selena, I think Dorian doesn't know what to feel about Selena. I think Selena is so in her own feels, she doesn't even register him. I think she registers anger. I think she registers being insulted, but I don't think that the same way that Dorian is like, what? You mean you're a real life woman? Oh my God. I think Selena's just over here trying to keep it together and not absolutely break apart. And then sometimes it's like, oh, you're annoying.
Yeah, I agree.
So when Selena says, quote, I'm already notorious as an assassin. I don't particularly feel like being notorious for sharing your bed. I love it because she's like, I would rather be notorious for doing my own shit than I would for being with you. Like, her murdering men is much better than her sleeping with one man.
Yeah.
That's the kind of notoriety you should strive for. Not you guys. fictional characters. We'll be right back.
Jack, as you know, I cannot resist Pride and Prejudice. I will always go back to it.
And because we can't get enough of it, I am so excited to tell everyone about Dipsy and how they're bringing to life Mr. Darcy with their sexy British voice actors.
Dipsy is a female-founded app for spicy audiobooks and more.
It's created by women for the female gaze.
Their app has over 1,000 spicy audiobooks, all crafted by a team of professional writers and top-tier narrators.
Whether you're looking for a rugged cowboy or a Scottish sailor or a sexy rendition of Pride and Prejudice or the god of the underworld, you'll find characters you'll love on Dipsy.
With their easy-to-explore app, you can search for your favorite romance genres like contemporary, historical, dark, sports, western, romantasy, sapphic, yes, and more.
New chapters are released every week, so you'll always find something new to enjoy.
I can't wait to dip into Dipsy more.
Right now, our listeners can dip into Dipsy as well. Listeners of this show can get an extended 30-day free trial. Just go to dipsystories.com/booktalk to start your free trial.
That's DIPSEA stories.com/booktalk. BOOKTALK for 30 days of full access for free.
Let's all dip over and visit dipsystories.com/booktalk.
As most of our listeners know, I'm getting married, and let me tell you, getting married is expensive.
Let me tell you, being a guest to your wedding is expensive, and that's where Acorns come in.
Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future, and in my case, my wedding.
You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you to your money goals.
You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change.
Money planning stresses me out quite a bit, and Acorns makes it so easy.
It only takes 5 minutes to create an account with Acorns and start investing. It gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track, which is sometimes just the hardest part.
I love it because no matter what age you are, it's always important to be able to take control of your money and your investments.
So sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/booktalk, that's BOOKTALK, or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK. My new focus in life and in my wardrobe is quiet luxury. The things that are nice, that make me feel good, but I know are worth the money that I spent on it without being boisterous.
I've definitely noticed that I've been spending more time on elevating what I'm purchasing, and some of my favorite go-to items have been from Quince. That's because they offer a range of high-quality items, but with prices that are within reach and very reasonable.
They have 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses that I love to wear to work.
Quince items are usually priced between 50 to 80% less than other similar brands.
They work with top factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes and cut out the middleman in the process.
One of my all-time favorite cardigans is actually from Quince, and every time I wear it, I always get compliments of how cozy and how soft it is.
My favorite Quince item is this button-up washable silk blouse that I wear to work, and what I love about it is it's so versatile. I can pair it with a cardigan, I can wear it on its own, I can wear it with a blazer, and it always makes me feel good about myself.
Give yourself the luxury gift you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK.
This episode is brought to you by Coffee Mate. After watching this season of the HBO's original series, The White Lotus, this is the tropical getaway I needed. One more pina colada, please.
Hey, you're not on mute.
Oh, I thought I was in paradise. Turns out it was my coffee mate. Coffee Mate Pina Colada and Thai iced coffee flavored creamers. Inspired by the newest season of HBO's original series, The White Lotus. For the love of coffee. Try now.
I want to get more into the conversation that Amy was referencing. So this is when Selena says, quote, "Is it enough for me to say I don't take jewels and trinkets as payment for my affection?" Remember, he was being all proud for pampering her in the chapter before. And then Dorian snarls, "I'm not going to debate morality with an assassin. You kill people for money, you know." Her eyes became hard and she pointed to the door. "You may leave now." "You're dismissing me?" He didn't know whether to laugh or to yell. She made it clear that she cannot be bought. So therefore, he then has to dehumanize her in a different way. And if you think about what we're about to learn, how Arabin literally bought her everything, and she had to then buy her freedom back. That's going to hit harder too, which again, genius moment where you have this conversation with her and Dorian about being paid for. And then later on, you learn with Kale that she had to buy her own freedom back from Arabin. I love the juxtaposition and why it's like, Shame's kind of like, well, which one is she going to get with? I wonder who. And she then takes control by dismissing him, which is then, he is shocked by that. But I also think it's like, her like being royal as well. "You may leave now." It is, if you've never dismissed a man before, I highly recommend it. I've done it to a guy in the middle of a date. I've dismissed him and it was great. So yeah, I think that we are continuing that Dorian is a douche McGee.
He is. And Selena's just really flipped the script on him. He came here for power and she's controlling the situation. She's not falling victim to his antics. I'm going to give Dorian the benefit of the doubt because has he ever had a healthy human relationship? Has he ever seen a healthy human relationship? I'm going to go out on a limb and say Dorian has not.
Has he seen anyone? We keep saying that no one in his life has power. The only person in his life who has power is his father, who is a mass murderer.
Exactly. What we're learning about Arobin, it's hard to argue that Selena knows what a healthy relationship looks like either.
Well, from her parents, she remembers.
True. We're going to assume, right, we know enough after Heir of Fire that her parents were a healthy relationship. But from the age of 8 until now, so over the past 10 years.
A lot more trauma can happen in between.
Plenty of trauma, not a lot of health, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And ultimately, whether you just think Selena and Dorian misunderstand each other and maybe they could overcome this, I don't think these two were ever going to work. And I think SJM's making that pretty obvious. They don't know how to have a healthy functioning relationship. But I think they do learn from each other. I think they do learn, especially on Dorian's part, how to have a relationship, how to have a friendship that isn't always about power.
Yeah.
I love that Selena sees right through Dorian and calls him out essentially for being like other men. Like, he's bored. She's his shiny new toy. She can tell that because it's happened to her before. Arobin treated her like that. So whether or not she's right in her anger, Selena's lashing out against Dorian because he intruded on her vulnerability and comes to shame her. No, not allowed. We're allowed to have boundaries. Build your boundaries.
Absolutely. I'm looking at my note. Dorian is being a dick. I mean, I can't keep saying that.
We've said that a lot.
I know. I have to come up with a different thing. Dorian keeps not being great. And Selena is struggling so much to be honest with herself, though. Quote, "You're being prickly tonight," he said. "You're not nearly as chatty as you were this afternoon. I'm not some odd commodity that you can gawk at." She stepped closer. "I'm not some carnival exhibition, and you won't use me as part of some unfulfilled desire for adventure and excitement, which is undoubtedly why you chose me to be your champion." Damn, you tell him. There's she is getting really honest. She has to be honest with herself to be honest with the situation as well.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we've been saying is that he's, hungry for excitement, hungry for something, and he's using her that way. And I do want to know, though, why is it she is so honest now in this moment? Because there is a lot of vulnerability on her part, and it is more vulnerability, I think, for herself. Like, she's saying a lot of vulnerable things, but I don't think the impact is more to him, is to Dorian, as it is more impactful to herself. So
Yeah.
why is it happening now? And they are, because Dorian and Selena were pretty friendly leading up to this. And I think it's because Selena was thinking about Sam and the last time she truly might have felt like herself. It brings back her own knowledge of her own self-worth, of her own value to the forefront. And she's able to then push back at Dorian, like now at this point, she's like, yes, like this is what it was like when I was happy. This is what it's like when things that actually mattered. Cause I think that's another one where when you're remembering death and the pain that you went through, it puts things in perspective and just saying, you know what, you are not worth this. You are not worth my time. And I love these hints of Selena because there is true badassery there. And I feel like the first 3 episodes have just been her being very petulant and spoiled. And we're going to continue to get that. It's not like we're going to get badass Selena. We're not going to get Aelin from here on out, right? This is still Selena, but we're getting these hints of her. And she tells Dorian, quote, I am already at your father's disposal. I won't become his son's jester too. It was his turn to blush. Had he ever been scolded by anyone like this? His parents and tutors, perhaps, but certainly not a young woman. Don't you know who you're talking to? It's very Draco Malfoy. My father will hear about this. Just wait until my father hears about this, Potter. But Selena's making it clear that she will not be owned by a man. Like, she might be temporarily owned by the king, but she will not be owned by Dorian as well. I hate the fact that he just thinks of her as a young woman, because there's a dismissal of it too, right? It's not just woman, it's young woman. So now there's even more devaluing of her, which again, why do we have to bring age into this?
Yeah, because he's barely a year older than her.
It's stupid.
Regardless of how petulant Dorian is, he has been properly scolded. And so he's like, fine, I'll leave. But I'm leaving because I want to leave, not because, anyway, not because you told me to.
Yeah.
But where does he pause? He pauses at the threshold.
And we had some other threshold moments when Selena was entering the city again, when she left the prison. So, we've had some good threshold moments already.
Yeah, but just as a reminder, a threshold is usually something significant. You're passing from one chapter to another. You're passing from one mindset to another. And Selena stops Dorian before he crosses the threshold. Quote, he was almost to the threshold when she spoke, her voice distant. His name was Sam. Selena has been vulnerable with Dorian in this scene, but not because she chose to, but because he intruded. So when Selena offers up the information about Sam, that is the first time Selena is consenting to vulnerability with Dorian. And I think that's significant in the context of the threshold, because I think if Dorian had already made it past the threshold, she would have stopped. She would never have made that confession to him. But Selena is sad. She's grieving. She's trying to heal. So I don't blame her for ultimately giving in to her vulnerability. Not much more is said after Selena's confession, and Dorian goes on his way. He crosses the threshold. Now, that moment, to me, is significant. What we see after he crosses the threshold, I think, is Dorian choosing to leave his place of comfort. It's him choosing to acknowledge that maybe the way he's looked at the world, maybe the choices he's made thus far are not the choices he wants to make anymore. And to me, that really is encapsulated in this ending scene of the chapter. Quote, he couldn't banish her heart-wrenching music from his mind, even when he burned his mother's list of eligible maidens, even when he read a book long into the night, even when he finally fell asleep. The act of burning the list of names of eligible maidens that his mother gave him is super symbolic, right? I can see it cinematically. It's a rejection of his life at court. It is a rejection of what he is being told to do by his mother and therefore by his father at the same time. Now, new readers, I think I did this too, might be like, oh my God, he's so into her. Burning the paper is proving he's in love with her.
Yep.
No, we know, I think we've made a case that that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dorian is entranced by Selena and the symbol that she is.
Yeah.
She is a symbol of rejecting his parents.
Mm-hmm.
She is a symbol of the power. She is a symbol of him rejecting their power over him and his life. And ultimately rejecting, I think, in the end, how Adderlin is ruled, right?
Yeah.
Selena is going to change the course of Dorian's fate just by being here. And I don't think any of us are surprised. We've seen him mentally diverging from the king. We've seen him rejecting his mother. Selena just happens to be his first real act of rebellion.
Yep. Yep. Thank God for chapter 21. It is all action.
Yeah, thank God.
It's a short notes chapter.
It is the second test we are happening upon in chapter 21, where all the competitors have to climb a tower to capture a flag. They get to choose one item from a random assortment of items to help them.
It reminds me of like the very first episode of Fear Factor. Remember the Fear Factor?
Oh gosh.
And then like if you go back to the first episode, it was just them propelling out of a window. You're like, that's it?
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then later on, it was like, oh, these rats are going to be all over you. Yeah, no, it was just like a little jump out of a window when you're being like propelled down. Same thing where I'm like, you're climbing something? That's exciting. All right, whatever.
Yeah.
But I want to highlight this particular quote. So basically, you know, Selena, she goes the hard route. Everyone goes this easier route. You know, Nox is knocked off. All these things are happening. Yay. Now this quote. Looking down was always a bad idea, even if Arobin had forced her to stand on the ledge of his assassin's keep for hours on end to become accustomed to heights. Like, her training was intense and not healthy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously lots of trauma. I can't blame her for hyping herself up to say she was the greatest assassin. Like, if she had to endure that crap,
I'd be the greatest assassin too.
Yeah.
Or the greatest whiner.
Which Selena can be as well. Selena is confident that she could have won. Whether or not, you know, she purposefully took the harder route because Kane was taking the easier route and she could show off her skills. Fine. She might have even beaten him to the flag. Fine. But then Nox gets pushed off the balcony and Selena does the crazy thing of deciding, you know what, let me take this rope tied around me and dive for him.
Yeah.
So why does Selena save Nox? I think that's a question. I mean, it's definitely a cool moment.
Yeah.
But why does she make that choice? And I have a list of potential reasons. And at the end, I'm going to say, I think it's all of the above.
Well, you missed one reason.
Oh, did I?
Yeah. But go ahead. List your reasons.
Okay. Then you're going to put in the one I forgot?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been discussing how Selena is lonely. And Nox has become an acquaintance, quasi-mentor-student, quasi-friend situationship. So maybe that's a reason. Prior to Nox getting pushed off, someone else fell and died, and that really bothered her. She really had to force herself to not look. But now she's in this moment watching Nox fall. That could be a reason. Sven's death and the symbolic nature of it has weighed on Selena throughout this episode. And she's come to really understand that champions are humans and the death of these humans is pointless. Another reason. Last night, she was mourning Sam's death. She doesn't like pointless death. Or the clincher, Nox makes eye contact with Selena as he's falling. Like, what a way to get someone's attention.
Look away. I'm a bad person because, as we established, I can't hold eye contact if I find you attractive. Okay, so the same reason, in my mind, the same reason why Selena helped Nox the first time is right after he admits that he's from Terrason. That is her responsibility. He is hers, you know? Like
subject.
He's her subject. She is his queen. And that is the only semblance of home she has there. And she must protect him at all costs because that is home and that is her subject.
That is a very good point. I forgot.
Yeah, I know.
The Terrason connection. You're so proud of yourself.
I am, because you keep forgetting.
I do. We then move into chapter 22. And Selena really struggles with her choice to save Nox in some ways. And she kind of reasons her way out of that, but she still struggles. Quote, she would have won if she'd taken the easy route. She would have gotten there in half the time it took Kane, but Kale told her to stay in the middle anyway, and her path had been far more impressive and demonstrative of her skills. Kane had just had to jump and swing. Amateur scaling. Besides, if she had won, if she'd gone the easy way, she wouldn't have saved Nox. Selena, and I think also us as readers, are learning that there is a cost to every good deed, just like Selena's compliance with Kale's commands costs her pride. I do think this is a relatable moment. Sometimes we make the good choice, even if we don't like that choice. Does that make Selena a bad person? And I think the answer is no. It makes her human.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like she gets to be mad that she could have won and didn't win, especially since she keeps hating Kane. And, you know, her pride is still involved, but at the same time, like, we still are seeing growth. So she's going against her own pride to be a better ruler.
Yeah.
Selena does get in her head about saving Nox, though. Quote, foolish. It'd been so foolish to save him. What had she been thinking? Other than not coming in first, second, or third place, why does she think it's so foolish? And it comes back to my reason of him being from Terrason. Why is it that he is a special pick for her?
Mhm.
And why is it that it's bad that she shows how much she worries about him and cares for him? And I think it's another layer of, please don't find out who I am. Please don't find out that Terrason matters to me.
That's a good point. I always thought her thinking herself foolish was because it's a show of weakness.
Oh yeah,
she's
yeah.
not as ruthless as the other competitors.
Yeah, I think there's that, but I feel like there's other moments where she's not. There's so many times where she's not ruthless that I there's a lot to it, but that was one of the ones that I threw in there.
Now, how do we feel about Kale's reaction to Selena's swan dive? Because Dorian ends up congratulating Selena, like, whoa, good job. That was really impressive. Quote, and while the thief had hugged and thanked her again and again, only Kale had frowned when the test was over. Apparently, daring rescues weren't part of a jewel thief's repertoire. Now, this paints Kale out to be the bad guy, as if he didn't really care if Nox died. And yeah, I can see that. But I also think it's more likely that the act complicates his understanding of Selena. Selena did the right thing. She did the heroic thing. And that does not compute when you assume she's just an assassin. I think also, as I said, it shows Selena's weakness because she has a caring heart. And that makes her an easy target. That makes her more of a target for the other competitors, which ultimately makes Kale's job harder.
Do you know what I just put together?
What?
So in many ways, because we keep finding out these confessions about Arobin, and we find them out when we're with Kale. Kale is her new Arobin because he's guiding her, he's training her, he's building her up. And so she wants to make him proud the way that she never made Arobin proud. And what is it about Arobin? He's like a lost father figure. So now you have a double layer of wanting Kale to satisfy this daddy issue level of her.
That makes book 2 so gross.
I know, but also very psychologically correct in a way.
She has such daddy issues. I think it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So much sense.
Yeah. Because he goes to her and tells her, like, you know, this wasn't what we discussed. Like, this isn't what you should be doing. And so she keeps trying to make him proud.
Yeah.
She keeps wanting to be like, no, but it was worth it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like what last episode where he's like, you need to be more ladylike after practice. And she's like, okay, let me go put on a dress the next day after practice.
Yeah. He's a replacement for Arobin, and Arobin is a replacement for her father.
Yeah. Wow.
Isn't that though?
I'm speechless.
All right, let's continue. Everything feels gross now.
Yeah.
Kale, though, is staying now that like all my notes, I'm going to be thinking about that going forward.
Yeah, yeah.
So Kale's staying true to the course, and although he's frustrated for Selena, she's still, oh my God, this is still so gross. Because now my note here is that, you know, he's steadfast, he's consistent, he doesn't change. She knows what she's going to get with him. Very father-like.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I'm just putting it together that he betrays her like Arobin betrays her.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So, of course, now she needs to tell replacement daddy about replacement daddy. So she tells Kale about Arobin. Quote, Arobin told me that second place was just a nice title for first loser. And like, you have a lot of issues here, but what about the contradiction where you had one daddy replacement telling her you always get first, and the next daddy replacement, Kale, telling her you need to go mid-level. So now you have 2 replacement daddies fighting each other. Different lessons that you're getting here. But here is the bigger issue with Arabin. And this is talking about how he spent money on her training, on Selena's training. Quote, "No price was too high for him or me," she added, fingering the fine thread of her bathrobe. "He didn't bother to tell me until I was 14 that I was expected to pay him back for all of it." There shows that there's like an actual figure for a value of someone, right? And that her value is what he put into her, and she is expected to pay that back. And like her own value kind of feels like another theme you can almost see in these chapters and stuff. Again, it's almost like healing for her to tell Kale this stuff, because Kale, who is a replacement for Arabin, is telling her that's not okay and stuff. So of course she wants to open up more to him about Arabin. So then she says, quote, when he kind of like pushes back, like, that's not cool. And she says, quote, "Courtesans go through the same experience. They're taken in at a young age and are bound to their brothels until they can earn back every coin that went into their training, upkeep, and wardrobe." She's comparing herself not just to a sex worker, but to a sex worker who didn't have a choice, who was brought up into a situation and is then forced to pay back into a system that failed them from the get-go.
Yeah.
And then Selena tells Kale one of the biggest kickers here is that she paid back Arabin, quote, "And he then went out and spent all of it, over 500,000 gold coins gone in 3 hours." And that is Arabin making a point of her, of saying like, this is how little you're worth. You spent all this time trying to pay yourself back. Look at me spend it. That's I had money all along to do this. I do not care about you. And in many ways, while Kale and Arabin are similar, they're also very different, because that's a very moral thing that Kale would never have done.
Right.
So this daddy replacement is even better because, you know, not only is he steadfast in teaching you things, but he is also, you know, would never do that because Kale has the black and white morals, right? I think, though, going back to the contrast between Dorian and Kale, I think the interaction is pretty stark when you think about how Selena was with Dorian versus how she is with Kale. They're bickering at this point, Kale and Selena, quote, "However, a smile began to tug at her lips, and she soon found it reflected on his face. He tossed a piece of bread at her, which she caught in one hand and threw it back at him. He caught it with ease. 'Idiot,' she said, grinning now. 'Crazed criminal,' he returned, grinning too." They're finding comfort and peace with one another. They're getting to that really intimate, emotional place. And, you know, they kind of got into a fight and they kind of made up. Although, notice, no real communication was said about it. So,
yeah,
it feels healing, but it's also like, but nothing was really healed.
Right, exactly. The healing only took place because of some information that Dorian gave Selena, but it's a Band-Aid slapped over a gaping wound.
Wait,
really?
What was the information that Dorian gave Selena? That was the
That
Band-Aid.
Kale did not command the guards to kill Sven.
Right. I mean, but the other healing part is the fact that they're able to kind of like get back into their banter without, you know.
Yeah, and unlike with Dorian, where it's a threat and she's feeling like she can sense the power differential, with Kale, it's more match my energy, companionship.
Yeah. And then I just have so many questions about Cain. Look at her fascination with Cain. Quote, "Every day she got better at running, going farther and faster, and managed to keep from killing Cain when he taunted her at training." Again, I know he's evil. We know that he turns out to be really bad, but, you know, he's done nothing to you at this point. Like, what's taunting?
Exactly. She doesn't define what taunting is. I bet he's just existing and his existence is taunting her.
Guaranteed. Or he just looks over at her. What if he just thinks that she's really pretty and he's just trying to build up courage to ask her out to the Yule Ball?
I really think you need to write this fan
I
fiction.
do too. Like, he's just like this really sweet, innocent guy that was then eventually used for evil, but like the entire time he's like looking at her, just trying to keep his humanity.
I mean, what if he was brought up in like an all boys school and went to
Mhm.
all boys military training, and
He's
this is
just
the
really
first.
nervous about her, and he doesn't know, like, the first time he walks in, he goes straight to her because he's just so amazed with her, but doesn't know what to say. I'm gonna write that fan fiction.
I love it. I love it. So this fun normal, or like resetting of normal interaction with Kale ends with, quote, "It wasn't until later that Philippa brought the news. The champion who hadn't shown up for the test had been found dead in a servant's stairwell, brutally mauled and dismembered." This is an example of what I love most about SJM's writing style. We've already seen it a couple times in this episode, but this is more, I think, overt. That normal is immediately balanced out with tragic. Happiness,
Mhm.
goodness is immediately wiped away with the bad. It's so great because it's so much more impactful.
Mhm.
Sad is not more impactful on top of sad. Sad
I
is
know.
more impactful on top of happy.
Yeah.
This moment was a great moment for SJM to have done that.
Mm.
How we end this chapter, and this whole episode, is we see the humbling of Selena. We're witness to that journey of, oh, you're not all talk. You are
Mhm.
not as great as you try to convince yourself you are. And so the question is, why now? Which I think we'll get to at the end.
Yeah, and I really wanna look into the last line she says in this chapter, and that is, quote, "She'd always been so sure she'd make it," being one of the final champions. But if she were honest with herself, Selena wasn't so sure anymore. And again, that honesty, that brutal honesty, that questioning, that self-doubt, there's a lot of things that are making her face this reality, which we'll get into the question. Does facing her reality and her own honesty show that she's becoming more confident with herself, or just accepting a new layer of trauma? You know what I mean? Like, there's just a lot of
Yeah.
reasons why. Uh, and she's not trying to play herself up right now. She is facing her own dark reality. So we'll get to that answer after we get through some breadcrumbs and broomsticks.
In chapter 17, when Dorian is in court, he thinks to himself that he feels, quote, as if there were something inside him that didn't fit in with their merriment, with their willing ignorance of the world outside the castle, which is alluding to his secret hidden power.
In chapter 19, Dorian tells Kale, then you'll have the gray hair before you're 25, and Sardathian certainly won't fall in love with you. If she does try to escape, which she won't, then she'll break your heart, and you'd be forced to throw her in the dungeons, hunt her down, or kill her. Kale said, Dorian, I don't like her. It hits a little close to home. I feel like, we should look into Dorian being a psychic.
He might be the next Nostradamus.
I know.
And in chapter 20, when Dorian talks to Selena in her room, he tries, quote, not to get lost in her strange, lovely eyes.
Mm-hmm. Why are they strange, Amy?
Because they are the key to her Fae identity.
Ooh, ooh. Let's look at some listener thoughts. All right, one of the listener, because we like to kind of see what listeners are up to. So we did ask our listeners, thoughts on these early chapters. And Caesar says, I actually appreciate Selena's quote unquote vanity. Love that she kicks ass and enjoys looking pretty.
I love this thought from Caesar Fix because you know what? Why do we put women down for being vain? Men are vain all the time, and we just let them exist.
I know. Let her be celebratory of her own looks and everything. And also, I think we've learned that there's a lot of more meanings as to when she's really highlighting her own "I'm so wonderfulness."
Right. It's definitely a coping mechanism, but you know what?
Mm-hmm.
We all have to survive in our own way.
Mm-hmm. The next one, someone says, Sav Gab Hutch says, any signs that Selena is actually Aelin yet? So
We've definitely seen some princessy attitude and action from her.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another one, Rosie says, I love how much Selena loves luxury. Such a contrast to Farah just wanting paint.
I do appreciate how different SJM tries to make her female main characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why I enjoyed Selena / Aelin so much when I was reading Throne of Glass because she was a breath of fresh air compared to Feyre.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said about her love of luxury, and I think it's a big trauma response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to leave it at that so that over the course of the season, we will answer what that trauma response is to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And last but not least, assuming we're done, Steph.Nicole says, while I think who they each end up with is perfect, this original love triangle was so good.
It's true. And we
it's
can't say who
fun.
everyone ends up with.
Right.
We can't say, where it goes. But we do know by the end of book 3, it has exploded, and it is some great drama.
It's a dumpster fire is what it is.
I don't even remember things at all. Like there's some I know I should probably read into what happens in the book 2 and 3, but because I don't remember a big majority of it, but I kind of like the excitement and the fun.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it.
All right, I think I have a question for you, Amy.
Yes.
My question to you, as I scroll to look for it, what is it about the lead up to this section, or this section specifically, that no longer allows Selena to run from her past and be forced to face her demons?
I have so many thoughts about this, but I want to start off with the fact that after a year of slavery and just trying to survive, Selena finds herself in a situation where vulnerability is becoming normal, where she's deprogramming the way she had to think and act in order to survive prison, in order to survive Endovier. And so the repetition of vulnerability with Kale, with Dorian, mostly with Kale, it's unlocking access to herself and the things that she has not resolved, so that when Kale takes away access to vulnerability, she has to turn inward, and she can't stop the flow of vulnerability and the things that she has to deal with. I think your point about Kale being a replacement for Arobin has completely blown my mind and is definitely part of it. I'll let you talk about that. I also want to say that Selena is 18 years old. You want people to know your story at 18 years old. And I think that Selena, who has not dealt with the past, the true past of before she was 8 years old, and has not dealt with the trauma of the last 10 years or her recent betrayal, has to stop and choose which one she's going to deal with, and she's going to deal with the easier one. She's going to resolve the easier one, which is the most recent past.
Yeah.
Because it is easier to do that than to really grapple with the truth of who she is.
There are so many reasons, like you're saying, that we're at this point where Selena is being forced to, I don't think she's being forced. I think that she's choosing to kind of step into this level of reality. But I also think there's a level of forcing because, if she wants to continue winning or even surviving this game, she has to be honest with herself. She's not in tip-top shape. She is not one of the best competitors there. So there's a certain level of being forced, right? And then you have this emotional layer that she's starting to understand and uncover. And now that I have this, Kale equals Arobin thing, if you think about what is one of the biggest things that is missing here, and that is Arobin. Arobin came into her life very quickly after her parents died, right? Like he found her in the river, right?
Yes. Sorry, I just had a thought spiral.
Okay.
Yes.
So Arobin came into her life. He's the one who found her in the river. He has then had manipulation, control, and a constant abusive presence in her life from the get-go. That is all she's known. And then you have her in Endovier, who is a prisoner, but even then, Arobin has control over her safety. So she is at the will and mercy of a man until he decides he's no longer interested in spending money to save her. Now here she is, finally removed from that figure. You have a replacement Arobin who we'll say is at least healthier than actual Arobin. I'm not saying Kale's perfect, but he's not Arobin. And she's able to truly, for the first time, be away from that abusive father figure and start to kind of process and cope. And in order to process and cope, she starts to cope and process maybe even the trauma of losing her parents and kingdom, which she never was able to do when she was under that other man's control.
Yeah.
All right, what's your spiral thought?
So my spiral thought is a slight spoiler for Assassin's Blade, I think.
Yeah.
So just fair warning to anyone who hasn't read Assassin's Blade. But I just kind of put it together that if Kale is Arobin, I think
Dorian is Sam.
On some level,
I agree.
Dorian is Sam. And, you know, if I remember correctly, Selena and Sam didn't necessarily like each other to begin with. He was also an assassin. They didn't get along, and then they develop a close relationship. And in some ways, she's repeating that history with Dorian. They have a lot of similarities. They're both powerless in their royalness, in their nobility, and they do have dark abusive pasts. And so they are connecting against the will of Kale / Arobin. Ultimately, Selena is going to choose not to have that relationship, but there are a lot of parallels. And so for her to basically be reliving her past in the present with these two males makes sense that she's just like, oh, I still have to deal with the past. I still have to grieve the past.
I was thinking of that when we were talking about when I was like, wait a minute, Kale's Arobin, because she opens up to Kale about Arobin and she opens up to Dorian about Sam.
Yes.
So there is an unconscious connection that she's making with each of these men.
Yep.
Doesn't at one point Arobin kind of hint that he would marry Selena? Like he threatens to?
I think so.
Yeah. So even with like substitute daddy, he's like, I
think he was still sexually attracted to her.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think he was even saying like, well, now that you're older, we can get together.
Yeah. Ugh.
No, he's gross. But again, makes sense why Kale would be that one then.
Yeah.
That, you know, that, because you're like, oh, it's even like more traumatizing with like book 2. And it's like, no, it makes sense because Arobin wanted to be with her the whole time too. And then like, of course, Sam is like, you know, I hate to say it, but Sam's kind of a footnote. And so is Dorian and her romantic.
And her, yeah.
All right. I hope everyone else is just as blown as we are, because that was a fun. I was
gonna say, that's the most fun I've had in a couple seasons. Is this episode?
You said that last time too.
Did I?
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 23 through 26 of Throne of Glass.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. You can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk.
Bye.
Know what you're doing. Hold on.
Please be safe.
Okay. That was the better direction. Take a bite of my banana.
All I heard was, before I started recording, was, I'm trapped. That's why I was laughing.
I was trapped. I'm trapped.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the Roaring 20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.
My new focus in life and in my wardrobe is quiet luxury. The things that are nice, that make me feel good, but I know are worth the money that I spent on it without being boisterous.
I've definitely noticed that I've been spending more time on elevating what I'm purchasing, and some of my favorite go-to items have been from Quince. That's because they offer a range of high-quality items, but with prices that are within reach and very reasonable.
They have 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses that I love to wear to work.
Quince items are usually priced between 50 to 80% less than other similar brands.
They work with top factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes and cut out the middleman in the process.
One of my all-time favorite cardigans is actually from Quince, and every time I wear it, I always get compliments of how cozy and how soft it is.
My favorite Quince item is this button-up washable silk blouse that I wear to work, and what I love about it is it's so versatile. I can pair it with a cardigan. I can wear it on its own. I can wear it with a blazer, and it always makes me feel good about myself.
Give yourself the luxury gift you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK.
I used to think buying foundation online was impossible. How am I supposed to find my shade when I can't even get it right in store? Then I discovered Il Maquillage. I took their AI-powered quiz to find my custom match, and wow, this foundation is literally my skin in a bottle. The undertone and coverage are spot on. It's so neutral and weightless. I can't even tell I'm wearing makeup. Plus, with Try Before You Buy, you can try your full size at home for 14 days. Take the Power Match quiz now at ilmaquillage.com/quiz. ILMAKIAGE.com/quiz.